Why a Nothingburger became a thing. Ottawa Senator rumours and hockey culture. Why does this video even exist? I want to talk about the Ottawa Senators situation. Not because I care about the Senators at all, or because I care about the rumour. I don't. But because I'm interested in hockey culture. Whenever something like this happens, I'm far less interested in the supposed scandal itself and far more interested in the reaction to it. This situation has triggered a whole set of familiar debates about privacy for celebrities and famous athletes, about the Streisand effect, about players not signing up for their families being dragged into things. These are all of the angles that most of the discourse has settled on. What I find interesting is that none of these conversations that I've heard so far has really got to the heart of what I think this is actually about. The discourse about it tells you much more than the incident ever does. So I'm going to start with the official senator's statement because everything flows from here. I'll put it on screen, but basically it's a statement from the president of hockey operations and general manager Steve Staios of the Ottawa Senators. It reads, "Our organisation was extremely disappointed to read the completely fabricated and false stories that are spreading around social media about our hockey club. Linus is away from our team for personal reasons, and he has the entire organisation's support. We ask that people respect his privacy, but clearly that request was not heard by the lowest forms of trolls and sick people who scour the internet. We are disgusted that outside forces are attempting to disrupt our hockey club. This statement will put an end to the ridiculous speculation that has spread online." Very strong words. What matters isn't just that a statement was issued, but how it was written. Emotional, moralized, and absolute. Language like disgusted, outside forces, and basically this ends here, immediately elevates whatever is being addressed into something existential and threatening. The question that I was asking was quite simple. Why did something like this require this level of response? Everywhere I have seen this statement posted, and it's been posted in a lot of places, there have been a large number of comments that are basically, what is this even about? Most people knew nothing about it, myself included. I had to actively look for what triggered it. One person on Facebook said, "I didn't even know there was tea until this statement to ignore the tea. Now I'm tea hunting." So that's basically what's happened. Until they issued this statement, probably the majority of hockey fans didn't even know there was an issue. At a very, very high level, my understanding of the scandal is that the goalie for the Ottawa Senators went on personal leave, no reasons were given. That's a bit weird, but probably nobody cares outside Ottawa Senator fans. Someone random on Twitter tweeted that the goalie was cheating on the road. His wife found out. When she was upset, he basically tried to dig himself out of a hole by throwing his teammates under the bus. It sounds like he might have said something like, "I'm not the only one who does it, the other guys do it too." There might have even been an implication that the captain also did it. The wife got upset and told the partners of the other players. I have no idea if this is true, and I honestly don't care, but that's kind of what started all of this. So, why this should have been a nothing burger? If the rumour had been limited to a single player cheating on a partner, then we certainly would not have had anything that became a league-wide talking point. Infidelity amongst pro athletes and celebrities is not shocking. It is not rare. It's not even interesting anymore. It usually generates a brief flurry of gossip and then it will disappear. We know this because similar rumours about hockey players, including far more serious ones, have circulated before without organisations ever issuing a public statement. We've had things about drug taking, affairs, all sorts of random things. There have been so many scandals. No one cares. It always blows over. So the issue is, if the act of cheating alone isn't enough to trigger this response, something else clearly is. So the part of the rumour that actually matters is the fact that at the very high level, the rumour didn't just involve one player's alleged private behaviour. It implied that private behaviour had spilled outward. So teammates were implicated, leadership was implicated. Hockey players were talking to their partners about what happened in the room and on the road, which is not permitted. The internal boundary between the room and the outside world had broken down. That's the difference. So this stopped being about sex or fidelity and was instead about containment. I've talked before about the hockey code that nobody says out loud. Everybody knows about the fighting code, but they've got a different code as well, which is their own moral hierarchy. So private misconduct like cheating is not wrong and is tolerated as long as it stays private. Silence is framed as loyalty. It's the exposure that's framed as betrayal. So the sin isn't really cheating in a hockey locker room. The real sin is talking about it, letting what happens in the room and on the road become visible outside of it. So that's why a player who cheats on his wife or girlfriend is fine and can remain one of the guys. But a player who breaks the code, even by telling the truth to their own partner, risks being labelled disloyal. So this isn't about honour or anything honourable. It's about protecting the sanctity of the room. A lot of the commentary that I've seen online and on YouTube has framed this as a noble protection of players' families by players and the club. But that framing collapses once you separate privacy from containment. If this was primarily about protecting families, the concern would exist long before anything became public, when deception, omission, and compartmentalization are happening quietly and routinely and protected by the system. You can see that the alarm only sounds once the information leaves the room. So what's actually being protected here isn't family well-being so much as potentially privacy and the sanctity of the room. And what I've said, the expectation is that what happens on the road should stay unspoken and that internal arrangements remain insulated from partners, media, and fans. But by invoking family sanctity, this functions as moral cover for preserving an internal culture that depends on silence, not transparency. So I don't think anyone here is outraged about the infidelity. They're more outraged about the fact that there's an allegation that someone has broken the code of silence in the locker room. In terms of going on leave for personal reasons and the narrative vacuum, I personally believe that players have an absolute legal and ethical right to privacy. However, the fact remains that a prolonged unexplained absence by structurally critical players, like a goalie, create a narrative vacuum. When someone goes away because of injury, there is not the same amount of speculation because they're culturally legible. Even vague injury information narrows speculation because even though it may differ amongst different players, people know that if someone is injured, this type of injury or that type of injury, they're likely to be out for so long. If you just have a personal reasons absence without any kind of framing, like bereavement, parenting, child, if it's just completely unspoken, then it does generate speculation. This doesn't justify rumours, and it's honestly no one's business except the player. But all I'm saying is that if you don't give any reason, people will speculate and they will make up their own reasons. So while we would like to think that silence is neutral and you shouldn't have to say anything, in this kind of environment, it has predictable effects. So the statement has backfired quite badly, I would say. Even those who are defending it, I don't think they're really seeing the fact that even if there were good intentions with doing it, the result is very adverse. I've heard an argument that this is an industrial relations issue, that from a management perspective, doing nothing carried its own risk. Once specific players and families were named, there was a real fear that silence could be interpreted internally by the players as indifference from their club. In that framing, the statement isn't really for fans at all. It's a signal to the players from management that we have your backs. That logic makes sense on its own terms. The problem is that the response chosen has likely made the situation much worse than better. By issuing a statement this strong, the organisation has done three things. It has elevated a banal internet rumour into a moral emergency. It has framed curiosity as hostility, and it has attempted to impose narrative closure in a space where that's impossible. In the current day and age we live in, most of these internet rumours don't live a very long life. They've given it oxygen by giving this sort of statement. There's a real false binary at work here, speak loudly or say nothing. Those aren't the only options. A neutral procedural statement or even silence may well have limited the spread more effectively than a hostile moralized response. As I mentioned above, language like disgusted, outside forces, and this statement will put an end to the ridiculous speculation that has spread online has definitely not shut the conversation down. It has escalated it and also attempted to police it. Even the phrase outside forces is now being mocked. When the Colorado Avalanche beat the Ottawa Senators yesterday 8-2, people were jokingly calling Nathan MacKinnon outside forces. It may well become a thing to use the phrase outside forces. So the statement did not contain the story. It basically publicized it, amplified it, and has hardened positions around it. And it has basically shone a light, I think, on the culture of the room. So this was never really about cheating. It was about the possibility that the room's unwritten rules have failed, that private behaviour has become public, that a player's loyalty to his teammates that should be above and beyond his loyalty to his family and his wife and girlfriend was broken, that partners compared notes when they weren't supposed to, and that the silence stopped working. And hockey culture reacts far more aggressively to that than it ever would to infidelity itself. The uncomfortable conclusion here is that what's being protected is not a marriage or family or even a single player. It's about the fiction that what happens on the road should stay invisible, and that invisibility is treated as the price of cohesion. So that's why this Nothingburger has become a thing. The rumour itself is not shocking. It's in fact very boring, but it has exposed a system that relies on not being examined. So the reason I find this interesting is that I don't care whether the rumour is true. I don't know of the players in question apart from their captain because I don't follow this team. But what I really care about is what moments like this reveal about hockey culture, what it tolerates, what it punishes, and what it pretends not to see. The reaction to this very strange situation, for me, has been the story. And so that's why this hasn't been a Nothingburger after all.